Hello and welcome to Microsoft's Higher Education Remote Learning Series. COVID-19 has created a challenging year for Australian universities. The impact has been so fast moving, there's been little time to shift courses online, to upskill staff, and to figure out how to deliver engaging online learning experiences for students. Join me in the next 4 episodes, where I'll be interviewing some academics from Australian universities who've been teaching via online tools for quite some time. The idea is to inspire others to help talk about some of the tools and strategies that they've been using to create rich online experiences and to have a discussion about what works and what doesn't. I really hope you enjoy the series. In this episode, we're talking to Dr. David Kellermann, who's a senior lecturer in the School of Mechanical and Manufacturing Engineering at UNSW, the University of New South Wales. David works across lots of different areas and is a lecturer, which you'll hear about some of the practices he uses in his classes, but his areas of research include continuum mechanics and fiber kinematics and biomechanics and other things that I know nothing about. So in between all of that, he manages to lecture with some pretty large class sizes and do a great job of that. So David, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Travis. Absolute pleasure to be here talking to you today.
Awesome. So what I'm really interested about, because obviously it's a fairly challenging climate we've got to work in at the moment for students, but also for lecturers, is the idea of how you create a community. How do you get learners to work together and to join together and to be connected to each other, I suppose, when we're working increasingly over distance. So how have you managed to some of your students either right now or the work you've done previously?
Yeah, creating community is, I think, really the holy grail of online education at the moment, because by its very nature, it isolates us, right? Thanks to coronavirus, we're here having this as a Teams meeting and we're both at home and we're separated. And by its very nature, it makes community building harder when the students fundamentally are engaging with the internet, not with other people. And so the obvious answer here is that we have to wrap collaboration and communication around every single part of the educational experience. The first thing people tend to do in online degrees is they say, well, let's make a forum. The forums are not usually very active. And one thing that we're seeing happening at the moment is kind of the iron horse answer. And, just to make that clear, we had horses and we wanted something better. And people said, well, what if we make them out of iron, right? Whereas what's happening with coronavirus is that the classrooms are shutting down and the educators just say, oh, well, let's just all have a conference call. And it's the iron horse solution, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there doesn't seem to be a lot of imagination here. Either it's just create a forum and expect some sort of magic to happen, which it generally doesn't, or just get everybody constantly engaged on these synchronous video calls, which is really not a very digitally authentic solution. So yeah, creating community is a complex problem that we could break down, but I'm certainly not going to wrap it up in one sentence.
Yeah. So how have you managed to, in your classes, because you have, correct me if I'm wrong, but some classes of 500 or more students in, especially probably first year engineering. How do you manage to do that? How do you manage to create that community or get students to work together or respond to each other, I suppose, so that you're not the sticky tape that glues the community together? How do you get them to run it?
Yeah, so the simplest way to address this is ask yourself, why does any community form? And the answer is that there's value there. The value may take different forms. The value might be necessity. The value might be that it's fun. The value might be human connections. And there are ways of thinking about a very traditional sense of a community, like a village. And, the town square, the place where everybody might meet, and it's actually called a forum. That's where we get the term forum. But people would come together as a community because they rely on each other, they have to help each other. And there's a lot of value to being part of that community.
Yeah.
So when we want to create a digital community, well, we have the same thing. We have a town square, a forum, a digital forum, but let's just take that first concept at face value. The forum is in the middle of the town, and it's, you know, the markets happen there and the shops are there, and it's where people aggregate.
Mm.
The forum is not 2 miles down the freeway.
Right.
And we have to build the same thing digitally. The digital forum has to be in the middle. And when we create educational experiences like, oh, look at this great website for doing this, and look at this fantastic app for doing that, and everything is dotted disparately, and somewhere over here, a mile down the freeway, is your digital forum.
Mm.
Well, it's obvious, right? It's not really going to work because it's not central. And there is an analog there to something being digitally central and physically central. The second part of the forum is value, right? There has to be a reason to go there. Why do we become part of a community? And for students, there's a whole multitude of reasons. One of the best reasons is that there's social engagement. That's where all of the other students are. That's where they're all talking.
Right.
Now, if you've got a really poor digital forum and all of your students go off and they create a private Facebook group or a private messenger group or WhatsApp or Discord or whatever it is, you've lost them. And they're over here talking to each other about how to do this assignment, and your forum, meanwhile, is, you know, completely barren and empty.
Right.
And so that idea is centralized, connected, a reason to go there, a reason to be part of something in order to be the basis of forming community. And so this is the reason why, you know, this is a very complex topic. There's a lot of different elements to it. But one of the things that I'm most passionate about when it comes to this is relentless integration. I want all of the different parts of my educational experience to be in one place. I want them all to be together. And in the middle of all of that and wrapped around all of that, I want my forum, my community, my ability to communicate and talk and converse. And the second thing is that I want there to be immense value to that. I want students to always want to talk in our space because it's better, right? That's where everyone is. You definitely get a tipping point with this. Secondly, they'll get their questions answered faster because the TAs are really active. Right. Maybe their fellow students will answer them faster because that's the place to be. And the fourth one that's really important is to get our head out of the sand as educators and stop thinking that there isn't stuff going on, like students sharing old solutions, sharing assignments, or doing what we might call nefarious activity or things that lack academic integrity, and they're going to do that somewhere else. Now, this is a fact. Students are going to do that no matter what. And if they're off somewhere else doing it, it's because you have done a poor job at designing your assessment and designing the educational experience. So we want to get the forum to a place where we say, and I literally say this to my students, there is nothing that you cannot post on this forum short of something that is illegal. Like, for example, libel, slander, hate speech, racism, copyright infringement. I mean, things that there are literally laws against, sure.
Yeah.
But if you go into the lab and you want to share your lab results, go for it. If you want to put your code there and share it with others, go for it. If you want to pull up past solutions, go for it, right? You have to say there is absolutely no reason other than illegal behavior to go somewhere else.
Right. And
now,
so part of that would be then, I mean, to come back to your value point, right, is that if students are adding some of that richness, some of those things that are around learning, like a bit of code or a past solution or a past idea, then that adds to the value, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, I get students saying, oh, does anyone have past papers? And I might tag all of the students and say, hey, if anybody has got some past papers, throw them in this shared folder so that everyone can have them. And we've got to dispel this idea like it's a secret that you've got someone's lab assignment from last year and you're going to, use it and share it amongst your little inner circle. We have to dispel those concepts, not only because it's pedagogically sound and it gives us better, authentic or high integrity assessment to do so, but secondly, because as soon as there is a reason to have a second form of communication that's separated from the one controlled by the educator, as soon as there's a reason for it, it's going to happen. Right. And if it's got stuff on it that has got value that you can't bring on your own, the students will go there. Yeah. And one way of thinking about it is that you've got this beautiful town with a beautiful forum in the middle, and everyone in your village is going down to the next town because all of the, vegetable is free or something. Yeah. You've got to keep them there. You've got to hold on to your community.
And so you spoke about how you sort of almost like bring the resources that are relevant to the town square, right, to the forum. Yeah. And so that, I mean, you use Teams for your sort of community with your kids and with your students. So how do you, what sort of stuff do you add in there? What can you bring in?
Yeah, so Teams is really important here when we talk about this. The reason why I use Teams is not to do with Teams itself, right? Teams is a great piece of communication software, but there are other things that do the same thing. Yeah. But what is very, very important about Teams is that it is part of a single login, a single tenant, and a single domain that is connected to Office 365. And Office is where we do stuff, right? Students write their lab report in Word and they put their lab results into Excel and they make their project presentation in PowerPoint. And they use all of these apps, and that's where the doing is happening. Yeah. Now, if we want people to collaborate together, if we have students who are going to do a lab together, share the results, and then work together on a final report, if we don't control the experience and give them the tools, the first thing that they're going to do, they're going to go and create a Google Doc. Yeah. And they're going to simultaneously edit. And then they're going to create a messenger group so that they can talk to each other, right? Yeah. And the thing is that our students are really digitally literate. They're actually doing, fantastic stuff all of the time. And the thing is that it's our job to make sure that we give them not only the tools that they want, but we give them tools that are better than the ones that they're going to find anywhere else.
Yeah, because they are resourceful, right? They'll work out a way to get the job done if an environment isn't provided for them that is all of those things you talked about earlier on. How about especially at the moment when we've got so many students whose main form of university study might have been to actually come on campus and do their lectures face to face and go to their tutorials and their labs. How do we manage equity at the moment, with so many students not being able to come onto campus, and we don't know how long that's going to last for. But how do you sort of think about equity and giving students access to all of the things they need?
Well, the baseline question about equity is getting started, which is, do they have a laptop? Do they have an internet connection? And what time zone are they in? Mm-hmm. So those are the first three questions that are a big challenge. Now, when our students are on campus, they definitely have a computer, because not only do we provide computer labs, but today it's generally an expectation that any student is going to have a good laptop. Yeah. They're definitely in the same time zone because they're living in Australia, they're living in the city. And the third thing is they definitely have a good internet connection because we provide the Wi-Fi on campus and we have amazingly, mind-blowingly fast internet. So we automatically hit these points of equity. Even if they don't have a laptop, we provide laboratories with computers that are powerful, that can run software. So that is a big challenge. the world doesn't have an answer for that right now because we're not prepared for it. Even let's take Australia, where we say, and I know that this is a topic of debate, but we say the NBN, the National Broadband Network, is going to provide fast, stable internet to everybody, which it doesn't necessarily do. But that's limited to our own country. And when we have international students, we can't possibly somehow ensure that someone who lives in, Burma or Bangladesh or wherever is going to necessarily have fast internet. I think that's not a problem where we just go, oh, well, we can't solve that, shrug your shoulders and give up. I think actually that raises a really important question, which is to do with the bandwidth of communication. Now, right now, you and I, we're using a lot of bandwidth. We're having a two-way video call. If you have 10 people in a video call, you've got 10 times the bandwidth of a single video being broadcast out, because one person's going out and every other person's video is coming in. So it's very interesting to consider the fact that if you've got 200 students in a conference call, you are using 200 times the bandwidth of a single broadcast of a live event. So this is an example of the iron horse solution I told you about before. These conference calls are just an iron horse solution, and they're chewing up immense amounts of bandwidth. And as a result of that, they are potentially breaking down that equity question that you brought up. The other thing, of course, is that upload is generally slower than download, and so receiving video is easier than sending the video back.
And so do you use a combination of the two from time to time, or do you use broadcast, the live event kind of style of broadcast technology more for delivering lectures?
Asynchronous and asymmetric generally. Okay, so if we're going to have a lecture, I do them as a live event, so it's one-to-many, and the students ask questions back by using the Q&A feature, which is text. Now, instantaneously, not only have we reduced the bandwidth load for the servers of planet Earth by literally by 2 orders of magnitude, right? 1/100th as little compared to 100 students synchronously and symmetrically. This is the first factor, but the second factor about it is, when we introduce that ability just to ask questions back by text, we also pull away a lot of issues that students might have to do with anxiety or shyness. Anyone, yourself, you said that you've worked at university before. Anybody who lectures classes knows that if you've got a room of 100 over the course of the semester, it'll be 5 or 10 students who ask all of the questions all year round. And there are other students who are terrified of putting up their hand. They're terrified of having, a finger pointed at them. But they're not terrified of typing something in as a text question. And so, this is part of equity as well. So it's not just equity to do with, oh, do you have enough bandwidth or do you have enough internet? But it also really opens the playing field up for more students to interact and to get past a lot of the anxiety, particularly in that age group in life. That 18 to 22-year-old is a big spike in anxiety for most individuals in their life.
And so you mentioned about the idea of the Q&A, while you're recording lectures, and therefore that's kind of a live interaction while you're, broadcasting some information that's crucial. What other sort of things have you done in your experience before this or during this that has sort of created that interactive, because we don't want online learning to be, death by PowerPoint or death by Google slide. That's not really what it's about. And so how do you build interactive stuff into your classes or into your delivery of content?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I think that's something we could even talk about right now. Maybe what I might do is I could just screen share for a second. So let's just say, for example, we're doing some mathematics and we are solving some problems that we're working on. Perhaps I might bring up my OneNote class notebook here. And so you can see here, we've got all of these different solutions we're working on throughout the course of a particular topic. I'm going to solve a lot of problems here in OneNote with a class notebook. Right. And everything that I'm doing in these notebooks, I'm solving in real time. I'm drawing, I'm writing out these solutions in real time. And I will ask the students for guidance. I want to read into their mind. I want the students to say, oh, this is what you need to do next. You should use this equation. Because not only am I bringing them into the learning, not only are we collaborating together, but I'm also able to see into their mind. I'm able to understand where they're at, how good their understanding is. But the really beautiful bit about this is that we can look on the left and we can see the list of students. There are all of the students there. They are owners of this notebook. Okay, they are collaborators and they are, co-owners of this. So we can go.
I think the flip side of that too is the fact that when we, you attend a university class, and often what you want is, if I'm going to go to Dr. David Kellermann's engineering class, who's an engineer of, at university, I want to see you think like an engineer too. Sometimes, I don't want to see you present static stuff. Sometimes I want to see you do the problems, and you do the problem solving, so I can learn how an expert does it. Do you think that sort of resonates too?
And it's not just that I'm going to do it in front of them, but it's also that they're actually part of that problem solving solution. It's this idea that it is a collaborative experience. And if we take that notebook, not only are they co-owners of it, but you can see here, if I click the notes tab for a particular topic here in Teams, you'll see that those notes are automatically embedded back into the team. We've brought all of those resources. And that actually brings me back to a particularly interesting concept here, which is to actually have a look at one of my teams, right? So in this example, I've got Engineering Mechanics 1, Eng 1300, and the first thing that I want you to take note of is the channels that I have down here on the left. So I actually have got a channel for every single week of the semester. All right, week 1 through to week 9 are all of the topic weeks. And I've got the topic that we're going to work on. Let's say it's week 2, structures and trusses. And this is where we're going to talk about trusses and structures. But we go further than that, because now if you have a look at the top of the screen here, you will see that I have got all of the tabs for that channel. So these are the posts. This is where we're going to communicate. This is where students are going to take photographs of their own problems and ask questions about those problems. The files might be where we share anything to do with it. The notes I just showed you, automatically it's going to point to the part of the class notebook where we've been solving these particular problems. Then this is one of my favorite things, which I think educators really should be aware of, which is creating a SharePoint site. So this is my week 2 to do, and this is actually a SharePoint page.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's kind of like the curriculum outline of what's coming next and what they need to.
Yeah, and for educators who are really used to a learning management system where they lay out the topic on a page, this is the place where you can do that. You can lay this out on SharePoint, and every team is built on top of a SharePoint site. And if I jump over here to SharePoint, you'll see my URL here is UNSW SharePoint, and you're going to see here that on the left I've got the navigation here for all of the different SharePoint sites that I have created in association with this particular team. And what's really fantastic about it is that, let's take this PDF we're looking here of the notes. This is the actual file, and it lives in the class material. So it's being stored, we call it OneDrive, but it's actually SharePoint storage. Yeah. And this is where all of the lecture slides live for the course. So let's jump back here. I've got week 3, frames and machines. There's a PDF, and we'll go back over to our team here. Okay. And what we can see is that I've got week 2 slides or week 3 slides, it doesn't matter. So these are the slides, these are the formal notes where we lay out all of the theory. This file lives on the SharePoint site and it's pinned here. So it's week 2, you're learning about structures and trusses, you're talking about it in the posts, we've got the notes for where we solved it, the SharePoint side is telling us everything, all of the expectations that we have to do, and we can aggregate these different files into a nice layout. The slides and the notes that we have to do with it are here. An online quiz for that week is pinned. I've got a wiki for that week, where often what we do with these wikis here is I tell the students, hey, if you find a YouTube video that explains a concept better than I did, well, rather than just keeping that to yourself, why don't you add it to the wiki for that topic and let everybody enjoy that particular tool or that video?
Yeah. And you can see here what what you've created is, I mean, it's that forum, right? It's that marketplace. And you can see how that if I was a learner in your course, all my resources are brought together by just following across the top, and there's a new quiz, or there's an announcement to tell me there's a new quiz, or something. I like that idea. The other thing I just wanted to touch on quickly was I saw that you'd done some pretty interesting stuff using holograms or something to bring a richness of some sort of machine I don't understand into one of your lectures. So can you just talk about that really briefly?
Okay, yeah, look, that's an interesting example that you brought up there. Maybe I can actually just bring up a few.
A visual would be good, because
a few visuals just to show you what that actually looks like. So I've got a few images of this particular lab setup here. So here's an example where I would normally talk about something. So in this case, we're talking about the failure of materials, right? Okay. And how do we work out how strong a material is? Well, we take it in the lab and we break it. We break it with a thing called a universal tensile testing machine. We elongate it, we check how much force is on, how much it elongates, and at what point it breaks. And we do all of these calculations in the class. We learn how to calculate and predict. And sometimes we might send the students to the lab to do an experiment. But a lot of the times, these lab machines are in small labs. We've got 500 students, and we've got safety restrictions about the machines that they can use or the rooms that they can be in. Now, we've got simpler machines, but this is a really expensive, elaborate machine that we use. Rather than just having a slide and talking about it, or maybe perhaps we're in the lab and we'll take a video of it and we'll say, watch this video of an experiment. I had this idea about how can we leverage augmented reality as a small cost to bring value to a large number of students. Okay, so the first thing we think of when we think of mixed reality is like putting a big helmet on your head. Okay. Yeah. Let's take HoloLens. It costs thousands of dollars. You've got 500 students. Are you going to spend $1 million on these helmets and put one on every student? It clearly it doesn't scale and it doesn't work. But I've got something different here. You'll see this is an Azure AR camera, and it's not just filming what is going on, but it is also taking a full depth field of what's going on. So it's actually mapping everything, and it's doing this in real time. And I can do the same thing by having one of them in the lecture theatre to map the physical space I'm in. And then there's an example here where I might be doing, okay, so I might be doing a calculation here to do with when we think that this is going to break. And I can drop this machine into the lecture theatre in real time while the experiment is running. Now, if we imagine this particular scenario as a student, then what they are seeing is they're seeing the lab come to life right there in front of their eyes, and it's happening in real time. I might have one of my TAs running the lab experiment while we speak, and we might make it interactive. We might have one of the students say, hey, what happens if you change the loading rate of that? And because it's running in the lab in real time, we can actually do that.
Change it.
So we're bringing, not only are we bringing the students into the lab digitally, but we're bringing the lab into the lecture theatre as well. And I work a lot on these mixed experiences where I say that there's no difference fundamentally between whether you're in the room or whether you're online, which brings me to another point which I really want to stress here. I have been talking for the last year or so about this idea of multimodal engagement. Okay, and this is a principle where you say traditionally what universities do is they say this is the campus version of the course where you go to lectures, and here's an online course that we offer that's completely on the internet. And they're two separate things. They're different programs, they're different codes, everything about these two things is different. What you do with multimodal engagement is you say both of these things are the same course. And you can be on campus all semester except for week 3, where it's your brother's birthday back in Malaysia. And you're away for a week and you're an online student that week and you don't miss out on anything. Or maybe you've got a part-time job and you're a campus student on Monday and you're an online student on Tuesday.
Right.
But what's really interesting about this is that when something like coronavirus hits and all of your students are suddenly at home, there's no panic. There's no, oh my God, how on earth are we going to do this? It's just business as usual. Yeah. It's just that all of your students pivoted to the online version of engagement. I think this is an incredibly valuable thing. It's what I've been doing for the last few years. And it's amazing now to finally see all of these universities just be hit completely unprepared by this kind of situation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we could talk for another hour about some of the things, and I know you've done some work around assessment of engineering work using, stylus-enabled devices, and we might save that for a different chat another time. But I think it's a poignant time to sort of wrap it up and think about, the mixed reality stuff you just showed is like out of the park. I mean, that's amazing work, and and probably not achievable for a lot of academics or lecturers out there doing some stuff. But I think the community idea certainly is. And so, just to finish off, are there any sort of would you have any advice or tips or tricks for people to get started in this? Because there's a lot of starting, going on at the moment, given the situation the world's in.
Well, what I would say is that there's a lot of people, myself included, who have put a huge amount of thought into how do we break down all of the barriers and the challenges surrounding how to make online learning work better. And one of the big ideas is to put away the iron horse solution and think more about digitally authentic experiences. Think about how do you structure the experience? How do you integrate all of the different things that you're doing together into one place to make the best possible experience?
Yeah.
And how do you use that integrated structure to return value to your students as well? And so in the example there, when we say something as simple as I've got a week 1 channel in Teams and I've got all of the resources that I need and all of the conversation is going to happen there, we've also created a way of very, very effectively capturing the learning analytics surrounding that topic as well. So, best practices are integrate, break your curriculum down into 1-week blocks so that you can aggregate everything together, wrap conversation, communication around it, and make everything that you do become collaborative and co-authored. Make sure that there's no reason for students to go somewhere else. Make your platform and your environment the best possible place there is for them to do their work.
Yeah.
Because then you can own the educational experience, you can constantly be a shepherd to that educational experience.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, David, for your time today and your insights about what is a rapidly changing world. But I suppose that there are some people who are doing online delivery and online communities, have been doing it for a long time, and some are just emerging and starting. And so it's great to pick your brain for half an hour or so and hear about some of those ideas. So really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, great to talk, Trav. Thank you.